Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining our Elevate and Empower event today. I am your host, Elizabeth Pravat, and I will serve as your technical producer for today's event. If you run into any trouble throughout the presentation, please use Microsoft Teams to contact me directly. And if you can hear me right now, please give me a thumbs up so I can know that I'm coming through loud and clear. All right, wonderful. Thanks so much. Well, the Elevate and Empower is a spotlight on leadership and learning, and this series aims to enhance the skills and knowledge of VBAs, leaders, and aspiring leaders at various grade levels through our monthly training sessions. Before we get started, I wanted to go through a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording today's session, and your microphone was muted by default. I do note that we have about 44 of you here so far, so I look forward to hopefully seeing a lot of participation in the chat. You're encouraged to use reactions and engage with the presenter that way. And we also have enabled live captioning within Teams. So if you need to enable those, you can go to the More Actions button, which is the three dots at the top of the screen, then click on Language and Speech and select Turn on Live Captions, then confirm. Finally, your feedback is very important to us. So at the conclusion of today's event, I will share a survey link with you to collect that feedback. At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker for today's event on cultivating team strengths. We have Dr. Natalie Pickering, who is the organizational psychologist with Vision 9 from VHA, and we are so honored to have her expertise with us today and to take us through this session on cultivating team strengths. So, Dr. Pickering, we are honored that you're here with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I did drop my headset. Is our audio okay? I apologize.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. Let me share my screen. Those around here so I can see. Okay. Well, it's great to be with you. I know it is a really challenging time. I do a lot of executive coaching for VHA across the enterprise. I do a lot of team development. My background, I first started in the PTSD clinic as a staff psychologist, and then I built an internal EAP program facility, and then started doing some research and realizing that a lot of what was bringing people to EAP was related to team dynamics, leadership relationships. So I pivoted my career, and have been focused exclusively on leadership development and team development. So my goal today is to teach you some new ideas, give you some new frameworks, some tools, but I also want to encourage you to bring some self-reflection to the space. I think that's really challenging for leaders who are so invested in the people that they're leading and the teams that they're supporting to use material and to take those opportunities to kind of look in the mirror yourself. So that's what I would encourage you to do today. So just starting us off, I'm including these quotes because they really capture one of the premises by Gallup Clifton Strengths. So we're talking about a strengths-based approach to leading, a strengths-based approach to teams. Ken Blanchard, none of us is as smart as all of us. And then a leader is best when people barely know he or she exists. When her work is done and his aim fulfilled, they will say, did it ourselves. So again, sort of speaking to that, leadership really not in the spotlight. Our goal is to clear the way, and to, how some people describe it, lead from behind. So to get us started, this will give me a lot of information. You are hanging out with a psychologist for the next almost hour here. But if just thinking about your team, and maybe this is a team that you lead, it might be another team that you're a part of. I know many of us are on multiple teams and work groups. But if you were to think about your team as a structure or a landscape, What might that be? And I'll give you some examples here. Maybe the team feels like a bridge and your team is responsible for really connecting other processes or other teams. Maybe it feels like a construction zone. That's probably a lot of people's lived reality. I know on the VHA side of things, well, I'm emailing people and they're not there anymore, so that rings true. Maybe it feels like a tightrope, a cave. Those are just some ideas, but put yours. If you like one of those, feel free to use that one. If you have a different one, ooh, falling rocks. That says a lot. Thank you. The Leaning Tower. I like that. Mm, a garden. Yes. Rope bridge. A highway. Yep. Moving fast. A shaky foundation. Yes. Landmines. Ooh, traffic circle. These are great. A carousel. Yeah, Creslin, that is so many people's lived experience is this. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's like Swiss cheese and we don't know where the holes are and we don't know how they're being filled. Avalanche. So yes, I think this is, you're capturing from your experience what this team idea really feels like for all of us. By the way, you can use this in your own meetings. Use this as a check-in, right? A lot of leaders struggle with how do I check in with people, and I don't want to open this up to a whole group therapy, session. Do a quick check-in using a metaphor like that, and tap the creative side of the brain a little bit. It just gives people a new way of thinking about it. Let me steal that one, Ed. So, a related question. So you listed those structures. Where are you? Where are you on the bridge? Where are you in the avalanche? Where are you related to the structure that you just put forward for us? Elena, I love that metaphor. I use it a lot actually right now. The cocoon. There's a term I've been teaching to a lot of people. Maybe you've heard it. It's called a liminal space. And liminality is this idea like we're standing on the threshold of, maybe a doorway, and we look back, that isn't there anymore. So the way we used to do things, that's gone. But when we look through the door, it's really foggy and really cloudy, and it feels very uncomfortable, like the cocoon, feeling trapped. Oh, Laura, that's great. Yep. So I lived in West Africa for several years, and you're reminding me they had these men, the traffic, if you've never been or driven in places like that, it's something. It's pretty harrowing. And they were called yellow fevers. And these men literally were standing in the middle of this just traffic with these orange vests blowing their whistles because the traffic lights did not work. There was no such thing as that. So you're taking me back to that experience. Mm, I really like that garden metaphor. And the nurture and the tending, it also implies you need to know each person, right? Like what does the lettuce need versus the carrots versus the spinach versus the kale. Okay, I'll move us on here. Mm, Yeah, we don't know the plan. With a lot of leaders that I'm supporting, I'm encouraging us to take some pressure off, even in the language that we're using on change management, right? Which requires a future state, and we don't really have one of those right now. Preventing casualties. Yep. That's a tough way to lead, Jasmine. Yep. Thank you. So I am we're pivoting a little bit, and I know we're talking about strengths, and I want you to know that it's not lost on me that this is a tough thing to think about and a tough thing to talk about in the midst of this upheaval and crisis and construction. So stick with me, and just know that that is not lost on me. And that being said, because my clinical history is in post traumatic stress disorder, there is this really beautiful concept called post trauma growth. And maybe you've seen, the Kintsugi metaphor where they break pottery and they put it back together with liquid gold. And this idea that for having gone through this really hard, terrible, awful thing, you get appreciation for life. You get new realization of your own capacity, recovery of faith and spirituality. I can't remember what the other two are, but I think that's really applicable to right now. So the Gallup definition of strength is that second one here, the ability to provide near perfect performance in a very specific activity. That's our working definition here of strength. And just some research, teams that intentionally use the strengths, and I'm going to give you some very practical tools and ways to do that, but they're 6 times more likely to be engaged, 29% more profitable, and 15% less likely to quit. All of these are front and center for all of us in leadership right now. This data is related to leaders and teams who intentionally positively reinforce those strengths. And again, I've got some tools at the very end. I'll show you some ways to do this. It's always building trust. We see 29% boost in performance just in this intentional reinforcement of strengths. And then we see this 15% bump in what we call organizational citizenship and satisfaction. A lot of the leaders that I'm supporting talk about how just new behaviors that they've never seen before with their team. And so normalizing some of that, right? This huge stress impact. Everybody's just running around with zero margin of tolerance. This may be a hard question to put in the chat, but let's give it a try. How does using your own strengths change your own engagement, right? And engagement is we show up wholeheartedly at work. As leaders, you show up wholeheartedly as leaders. What's that connection for you between a strength of yours and showing up in an engaged way? And I realize this is infinitely more challenging right now. So your strength, whatever that is that connected to how you show up as leaders? Mm, yep. Susan, I hear that. I like that brick metaphor, Ed. Yeah. So, I mean, being mission centric is really, that's even more critical right now. Good. Okay. Let me move us on. So, this idea, again, this is, mm, yeah, that's right. So, knowledge and strength, and then that helps you to resource people. That feels purposeful. Mm, That's right. Being a light, maybe even, right, highlighting people's strengths in the midst of what feels really challenging. Uniquely contributing. Yes. I like what you're saying here, Catherine, and I'll note um, that you have recognized as a leader how important that is to you. And so that's driving your intentionality in your own leadership. My book actually is being published in September, and it's called Leading Becomes You. And it's all my focus is on leader identity. And that I think that's why that caught my attention. How you have been led, right? And what felt really positive about that, how we translate that into your own leadership style. Derek, that's a really great point. D's on the disc, really, especially in crisis situations and managing through big change, that relational style of leadership, which can frankly sometimes be challenging and feel like, can we just move on with this? Can we just get the work done? I love your insight there that you're needing to slow down and really be intentional in that relational communication. That's fantastic. So the difference between talent and strength, according to Gallup, is this, talent, it needs to be practiced, it needs to be intentionally used in order to become a strength. And the interesting thing about strengths, it's not just something that you're good at, but it is something that energizes you. And I think that's an important distinction, maybe even in some of what you're saying here. I may be really good at this, but if it doesn't fulfill me or if it's not energizing to me, that wouldn't necessarily meet this sort of Gallup definition of strength. Catching up on this comment here. Yeah, bridging the gap. I think translating is a huge opportunity for leaders to support, right? All the information that's coming down. How do we intentionally communicate that, translate that in a way that people can ingest, especially when attention is a hot commodity? So there's this idea, again, this is just coming from the Gallup strength premises, about fixing gaps versus fueling growth. I don't I don't particularly like setting anything up as an either or, because as we know in leadership, it depends, right? Everything is context dependent. Agility is so important. Um, and I'm just bringing this to your attention. You don't need to put a response in, but we can focus on what we don't have, what's missing, what are the weaknesses? Do we have to fix something? Where are all the gaps? Right? The premise of a strength-based approach flips that and says, huh, what's working? Where does the team collaborate really well? How do they do that? Why do they do that? A great question to ask team members is, what do you think your best contribution to this team or project is? And many of you shared your insights. You know what that is. And I'm positive that has gotten you to the positions that you have. It's a great question to ask the team. And just that question reframes this approach to collaboration from we don't have anyone who can do this, or we're struggling with this, or we don't communicate well about this, to where are we doing well? How do we translate that into, some of these other challenge areas? So the takeaways from a strength-based approach, you gain resilience, you gain cohesion, you gain performance, all of those things. So just a quick summary, if you're not familiar with the Gallup Clifton Strengths, there are 34 themes or strengths, and they categorize those into these four domains of strategic thinking, execution, building relationships, and influencing. Typically, when I'm coaching around strengths or working with a team and we combine all of their strengths, we're looking at a person's top 5. And again, what does that mean? How are we wired to relate to others, lead, think, and execute? So, putting an entire team's strengths together is very helpful. So, here's an example. This would be, and you could do this with your own teams. So, you've got your team member, and this is limited to their top 2. So if you're doing project assignment or you're needing to, strategically, especially now, right? If you've lost people and you're trying to realign, how do we get this work done? This may be a helpful thing to consider. What are the 2 top strengths of each person? And then, so project phase, it may just be, what the top priorities are for your work area right now. And then energy zone is basically what's their capacity right now. For all of us, this may be running on low, truth be told. But when we're not in crisis mode, there's some variation here, right? There may be team members who are already tapped with extra projects or extra duties, and so their energy zone is lower. It's just something to put in this matrix as you're making those decisions about how to best leverage the team strengths. And then finally, the support needed is directly connected to the strengths, right? So strategic learner versus achiever responsibility. As you know, some people have different things that motivate them. The strengths can give you some insight around that. And then you've got this handy, just quick reference as a leader. How do I need to support this individual? How do I need to support the team in a unique way while we tackle this particular project? So one thing that I think is really important to think about now is when we are in organizational crisis and there are these huge challenges for a team, sometimes what can happen is even though we know our strengths under duress, they they can get distorted. They can start showing up in ways that aren't as helpful. You could do both, Catherine. So I would first ask the team. They may not know what their strengths are, right? So whether you use the Gallup strengths or not, I'm actually going to show you another resource called the VA Values in Action. I would have them identify their top 2 strengths. Another thing that's really helpful, you could do almost like a mini 360, and I would send around the list, right, of your team members, have them, right, like, what are John's top 2 strengths? What are Catherine's top 2 strengths? What are Robert's top 2 strengths? And then it really gives you a good first step conversation. Um, and then, so I would build the table that way. I would certainly give the team some input and buy-in around how you're going to use that matrix, for sure. Does that answer the question? Yep, you're welcome. So again, knowing your strengths, how those show up on the daily, how those have led to your leadership success. When we add too much stress and we add too much duress, those strengths can actually become liabilities. Let me show you what I mean. So let's say that someone's one of their top 5 is responsibility. Well, when a person with that strength is feeling incredibly stressed and does not have an intentional plan for how to navigate that stress, that responsibility can become micromanaging. They might burn themselves out. There can be a martyr element related to that strength. Achiever pushes harder, ignores limits, fast track to burnout. It may alienate other people, right? Both of these have the potential to alienate the team if the the focus becomes, I'm just going to do it myself, right? I'm going to be this responsible and I'm going to be this successful. That can alienate the other team members. Someone with strategic as their top strength may go to solving the problem too quickly. They may skip that buy-in element that becomes even more important when bandwidth is so tight right now. If command is in the top 5, under stress, they may get louder, more domineering, lose collaboration, right? So some similar themes here, but some nuance depending on that strength. If empathy is a leader's strength and relational leadership comes really naturally in all of this stress, we see leaders over absorbing team stress. I'm seeing a lot of this right now because we are mission driven. We are also in healthcare. So I have a lot of empathy in the leaders, and they're carrying a lot of emotional and cognitive burden. So this can lead to shutting down, maybe some isolation. So I know this is a deeper level question. So, choose your comfortability in answering, but do you have awareness of how your strength may get distorted under this much stress and duress? What happens to your strength under so much stress? Okay. So maybe that achiever mentality there, the push harder burnout. That's a great insight. Thank you, Crystal. And that fight, flight, freeze. Um, and note, just because you fight or flight or freeze in one situation, you may respond very differently in another situation. Don't be surprised by that. That's really good insight. Lose sight of the strength completely. Absolutely. Overwhelm. Yes. Okay. Great. Thanks for putting those forward. Mm, yeah, so similar, right, Elena, to Anthony's comment there. Yeah, let's just go to denial. Can we do that? Absolutely. For sure. Okay, great insight there. I wanted to just bring to your attention another approach that is aligned to strengths. You may or may not be familiar with the idea of appreciative inquiry, but the reason I'm bringing it to your attention, it's a team-based, strengths-focused change approach. I know that's a lot to put all together, but basically taking this idea of noticing strengths, knowing what they are, capturing those, intentionally using them at the team level, and shifting that, gaps to gains focus a little bit. It comes out of positive psychology. And yes, so empowering questions, sharing success, and that co-creation. So I think that question came back earlier about that team grid, co-creating the grid. Just doing that intentionally is appreciative inquiry. So inviting the team to be a part of that alone is a strength-based appreciative inquiry kind of practice. Yes, Raphael. That's right. Micromanaging. If you've got hyper responsibility, hyper attention to detail, that can definitely uh, run away with you. So I'm sure you are familiar with so many of the change management approaches. We've got ProSci, we have the Cotter model, there's the Kubler-Ross change model, um, so many. So here's another one. And like any of the change models, they've got their own sort of breakdown. And this is the 5 Ds: define, discover, dream, design, destiny. If you're a high feeler, you're gonna love this. If you're a high D task, you may not like the language here, so that's okay. And if you're thinking, um, Natalie, are we talking about dreaming and destiny in our current reality? I think you know by now I'm working in the same system that you are. That is not lost on me. So let me make this a little bit more practical. Under discover, and again, I'm inviting you to start with yourself first. And I love the insight that you are sharing. All of this is such gold. But what helps you stay grounded in stress? My hope is that you are doing this, and if it means pressing the snooze button, that is fine. Whatever we need to do. This is an important one for leaders, is to acknowledge the disruption. And again, some of the challenge here in leaders that I'm supporting is, well, if I open the door, if I start acknowledging what is going to happen, what floodgates am I opening here? So this can be, you can titrate this, you can put parameters around this in lots of creative ways, some that I'm going to share with you today. But acknowledging the disruption, even for just a moment, is really important. That will get buy-in. That will get people to pay attention to what you're going to say next. Strength spotting. So again, right now, celebrating does not feel appropriate to anyone. So a version of doing that from a strengths-based approach would be to look for strengths. So even building that team graph that I showed you earlier, simply asking people to note 2 strengths that they see in other team members is an example of strength spotting. To take that one step further, if you do, brief a project when it's finished, when you look back, how how can we spot strengths even in that process, right? Were there new strengths that someone showed? Were there familiar strengths that seem to have gotten stronger? And then linking those strengths, right, to resilience building. So if I use that natural strength more and more, and I'm getting stronger in that, well, now I'm building resilience. And so we're doing that individually. We're also doing that as a team. So there's that macro level of resilience that we want to pay attention to. So when I blend this appreciative inquiry idea with a strengths-based approach, um, I may ask these questions of my team. Which of your strengths was active when you felt most proud of your work? Even we have almost 100 people in the room, even asking this question of this many people on the call, which of your strengths was active when you felt most proud of your work? What one person is really proud of at work is going to be very different than what other people would be really proud of in their work. So knowing, it's similar to that question I posed earlier, right? When you ask your team, what is your best contribution to this team? It's another way of trying to get at the strengths. Similar kind of idea here. How do your top 5 strengths shape your future goals? How I or we, the team, lead from those strengths. Under design, there's that team strengths project grid I shared, matching strengths to roles, and then doing check-ins, right? You can even use strengths as a meeting check-in. Did you use one of your strengths this week? How did you do that? Quick check-in. It also really reframes the focus for that meeting. So at when we're finished today, I've actually shared some resources, and Elizabeth is going to get those out to you. But one of them is the strength spotting handout, and I actually wrote some. It's not just look for the strengths and call them out. I've got a series of reflection questions, and again, I would encourage you to take some time for yourself around your leader identity, your leader approach, how strengths are showing up as you lead through this crisis season. Another handout that you'll be receiving is, I call it Strengths and Collision. And some people will ask like, well, how do we navigate conflict with, all this strength stuff? Well, here's your answer. Sometimes conflict is we can reframe conflict as two strengths running into each other. So here are some examples, and these are more and more are on the handout you'll be receiving. Um, but if someone has really laser focus, this is the way we need to do it. This is the way we should go, and is working with a teammate whose top strength is adaptability. We could do it 27 different ways. We could have, 14 different outcomes. That's a potential conflict waiting to happen. Command meets harmony, right? Sort of like the relational task idea. Someone, was talking about the D using the disc. Achiever meets empathy, right? Can we just get this work done? We all have 5,000 things to do. We have goals to complete. There is no end, but we have an empathic, relational, how are people doing, right? How are our patients doing? How are the families doing? Potential conflict. An ideas person meets a discipline person. An includer meets competition. So again, knowing those top two or those top five strengths of everyone on the team can actually give you as a leader some insight around potential conflict. And often conflict is happening, and these kinds of things are happening beneath the surface. So if we can inform our teams and help them use some of the strength-based language and even their own insight around their strengths. And, my strength must be running up against your strength. Is that what's really happening here? Okay, well, how are we going to navigate that? Yeah, just an idea again around that co-creation of that team grid. And especially now, the second question is really important, right? We none of us have the luxury or the ideal of a deep team bench that we can strategically organize perfectly for any project. That's not anyone's reality. So where might you stretch into a lesser used strength, right? Can we translate this project assignment or this collaboration or this opportunity as a stretch, right? Of a strength that is one you haven't had opportunity to grow. Again, just another couple of ideas here. Maybe there's a strength, right, of the month. If you've already cataloged those strengths from your team, have a team member, right, just prepare a quick 60-second overview of what that strength looks like, where it might show up, where might that strength be in conflict, right, with another couple of strengths, just to bring some education. This is something that you can do, physically or digitally. So posting the top 5, I've even seen people who have their backgrounds, right, with their top 5 strengths, but keeping that in a, where everyone can access it and just be reminded of how to utilize that information. So I talked about strength spotting. You'll get a handout for that. I've got that conflict cheat sheet that's coming your way. I mentioned VIA. That's called Values in Action, and the website is on the handout that you'll be receiving. It's another framework. But values and strengths go hand in hand. If I know the values, right, and now we're talking about what's most important to each person on my team, that is very helpful information as a leader because values drive motivation, right? So strengths would be, sort of at what is visible on the iceberg, right? What we see, how that talent is being used. Values are at a much deeper level, and those values drive, even for you, your values drive your motivation to lead. They drive that you're working in this enterprise and for this mission. Very important. You'll also be receiving just a quick summary guide of those 34 Gallup strengths. So you've got one reference sheet. And this I'll put the link in a minute, but a friend of mine sent me this song this morning, and I was like, I'm gonna share it with you. It's called, maybe you know it. It's called Breathe In, Breathe Out, Move On. It is by Jimmy Buffett, and it landed with me this morning in a way that just felt like, huh, I think that captures it, even better than appreciative inquiry. So anyway, I'm happy to share that link with you too. So I'm gonna stop sharing, and I wanted to just leave a few minutes. I would love to hear a takeaway. Is there something that you plan to utilize? I would love to field questions. Whatever you've got here, however I can be helpful. Let me stop sharing. Yes, Catherine, the all of those handouts will be coming to you by email. Each one of those is a separate handout, and those websites are on the handout. Yep.
Natalie, I have unmuted the audience, so people have mic rights now if they would like to ask questions verbally
Okay,
instead.
great. That's great. Yeah, please feel free to come off microphone and we can listen to someone besides me. Yeah, the strength spotting it's easy, it's fun, it's positive. I think doing that right now is a great idea. Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, I also like the way that you suggested to have them identify strengths in each other because it both familiarizes them with the concept of strength spotting, and I think will facilitate a discussion within the team that can promote team cohesion. We've had, as I'm sure many have had, transitions within our team just in the last few months, and so I think anything that we can do to sort of positively recognize one another and promote cohesion would be really beneficial. So I thought it was an excellent exercise. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm thinking about burnout, and one of the factors that contributes to burnout is loss of control. I mean, we know what many of the main factors are. So, not having autonomy, not feeling like you have any control over your work, over your work day. And there's something about doing this exercise, right? And asking them, like you said, to note those strengths in one another. We we are going to do this exercise and we can see the strengths in one another and we can make choices with the resources that we have and the people who are on this team to do something, and I think framing it in that perspective could be really helpful. That's right, Raphael. And actually, I don't think I noted this. at the beginning, but another premise, right, that Gallup Clifton Strengths would put forward is that we are shifting hierarchical to collaborative. And even though we don't have control over how the org chart is structured, you're still building microcultures. And I love even building an org chart for a team that is a circle, and certainly the leader is in the circle, and certainly the leader still needs to be the ultimate decision maker and all of those things. But I love what you're saying here and noting that shift from hierarchical to collaborative. Ed, please.
Yes, my question is about organizational citizenship. How do you what do you recommend to improve that?
What are you seeing?
Uh, Out group versus in group, I do not belong, or I'm
Mhm.
not really a good fit for that group. Somebody thinking that in that line. So
Okay,
how,
so
yeah,
it sounds like mindset traps there.
yes, you could say that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so I think shifting, right? Shifting the narrative. This may be your entry point into that, actually. So there is acknowledging, right? I realize this is not your sweet spot. I realize, right? If we don't acknowledge, we're dead in the water. And then pivot. So in light of that, what's our forward, right? Um, what do you need to be successful on this team? So even being creative in how we ask that question, implied in that question is this is how it's going to happen, right? And you as the leader are saying, this is what I'm rolling out. It's really not up for negotiation. And yet I'm inviting your input as to how we can structure. Is there a way for me to resource you? What do you need for forward?
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks, Kreslin. It really is a huge insight. There's a tool that I use a lot in my leadership training, and it's called the Enneagram. It's a different personality system that looks at 9 different types of personalities. And that system is really based on this idea that once I know whether it's my core motivation, whether it's my strength, whatever that is, getting honest that under stress, I overdo that strength. I overdo that gift. It's like I'm pushing my gift onto people, right? So the example for myself, I'm a type 1, and that's the good person, the right person, rule following, tends to perfectionism. So if being right is so important to me, when I'm under stress and duress, now I'm telling everybody the solutions and I'm giving answers left and right. Well, they didn't ask, Natalie, for your thought on the matter. So it can be a little painful, to be honest. This is some of that deeper work. This is actually what my book is about. This is the deeper work of sorting out your leadership identity. But this is a key insight that all leaders need to understand, right? If you're familiar with the Hogan, that's another assessment that we use for SES, and Hogan refers to these as derailers. Your derailers are potentially those strengths, but in a rough situation, in a challenging environment, when you aren't feeling supported as a leader, it will derail you just as much as it is the secret to your success. Well, I really appreciate your willingness to share your structures, where you see yourself on those structures. I just want to personally commend and thank you. I am well aware of what each of you are navigating in this space and time. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pickering. Oh, I see we have, is there any additional questions or are we through for today? I saw a hand go up and then it went right back down. Okay, I think we're all set. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Pickering, for being here and sharing your expertise, and for all the participants for asking such great questions and sharing insights. I will be sending those handouts out directly after this class, as well as the slides. And we have a survey that we would love to hear your feedback on. I've placed that link in the chat, and we'll include that also in the email. And this session has been recorded, so we will be posting that recording in the coming days. So please reach out to me if you'd like the link for that and wanted to share this content with your colleagues. So again, that concludes our session for today. And thank you so much again, Dr. Pickering, and to all the participants for being here.